Ali, thank you for that introduction. It's very kind of you, and I'm delighted to have this opportunity to present, albeit remotely, this presentation tonight to Mile. What I'm going to talk about is an issue which is very close to my heart after quite a few years in the telco industry. I've had the great privilege to work not only in the Middle East for the last 3 to 4 years, but also in Asia, in Japan, in Tokyo, and Seoul, in Europe and in the United States, all the time in the mobile and the telecommunications industry. And one of the greatest challenges that I've noticed that the industry faces is really this idea about delivering successful innovation. Now, innovation is extremely easy to talk about. It's very, very hard to do. And I speak with the lens of not only a consultant, but also from somebody who's spent time inside the industry, and also as an entrepreneur, where I've put my own money, such as it is, behind various different innovative ideas and projects in it.
David, I believe you dropped your voice, so you might have to tune it again. David, if you can hear me, I believe we have lost your voice.
One of the noted thinkers in this area is Clay Shirky, who said, the old models are breaking faster than the new models can be put in place. Now, what he means by this is that the pace of innovation is such right now that it's very hard for us to keep up with it. It's very hard for us to get a really good, strong sense of how to harness innovation, how to put a structure behind it. Telco people in general like to put structures. Businesses require structures. They require a certain amount of discipline. So the idea that the old ways of thinking are breaking apart very quickly makes it very challenging for us to get a good sense of what's going on. And this is really a lot of the nature of what I'm going to talk about in the next 30 to 40 minutes or so. On page 2, I'm going to focus on 4 themes. The first discussion is about why do companies find growth through innovation challenging? Why do they find it so difficult? This is, after all, about growth. It's about switching on growth where growth doesn't exist. It's about driving forwards in progress in our different companies. The second theme is about, for those people who have made it successful, why have they made it successful? What are the central characteristics of really highly innovative companies? The third theme is about which innovation models and strategies are what makes it really interesting. This is a great body of knowledge and experience, and I draw upon it quite extensively throughout this discussion. It asks several questions about who's spending most in innovation, why, how much effectiveness are they getting out of it, what's the difference between, or the correlation rather, between innovation spending and innovation effectiveness and results. Various other different themes. All of these materials are available on the Booz website. I encourage you very much to go and look at those. Let's start to explore the first theme. So why do companies find growth through innovation challenging? In general, there are 2 models for growth. There's incremental growth, where companies put products into market, develop products, send them out. They go through the normal product development and product launch cycle, developing different capabilities, working with industry changes, and so on. Generally, this produces what we call more of the same, but much better. So those companies who are good at doing this can drive growth through incremental means, but we contrast this with those companies which grow through true innovation. In this area, they do things which are revolutionary, which provide superior value, which satisfy needs for customers, which are more effective in new ways, which look at business systems and say, how can we redefine our business systems? which look into joint ventures and say, can we do something with somebody else which is in take us both into a different place? And generally what we see by contrast is the 10 times value increase through innovation. Now, I'm not saying that axiomatically that this is about one or the other, or that successful companies do one or the other. This is generally a combination of both, but what I'm trying to focus our discussion on is the growth through the innovation, clearly the right-hand side. I mentioned at the beginning that this is extremely difficult, and in our experience, 4 barriers typically stand in the way, one of which being organization structure discourages innovation. The way that an organization functions, how it works, how it's organized, doesn't give room for innovation to flourish. Another factor is a focus of being divided amongst many different lines of business. A company itself can be a highly complex institution and can be operating across many different market segments. Organizing innovation to either focus on one or another versus, sometimes in competition with the third one, can be quite daunting. Performance management measurement benchmarks. People are not generally, the word I'm looking for, they're not generally rewarded for their innovative behavior. To be truly successful, companies have to look at innovation as part of somebody's normal line of execution and make sure that this is rewarded. And lastly, this idea of risk, and companies in many parts of the world tend to be more risk averse than risk accepting. We've all seen of the wonderful examples of some of the technology companies who flourished in the past, from Asia, from Europe, from the Middle East, from Africa, so on. These are all companies who have a culture and a way of thinking about risk. They often have organizations which are explicitly designed to deliver risk. And so we come back to the beginning of these 4 barriers which stand in the way. The consequence in many ways is that ideas and products simply become evolutionary. So the process of product development results in products which just gently get better and better and better, and that the products themselves do not deliver the revolutionary change and innovation which is absolutely needed. So there's many areas to focus on, and by contrast, we think it's useful to look at the central characteristics, as we said, of the highly innovative companies. What makes these companies innovative? What sets them apart? And we see 5 areas where these truly innovative companies are set apart. The first is in leadership. The second is the balance between looking at a market and looking at technologies. The third is in global networks. Where do ideas come from? The fourth one is in open innovation. Does innovation have to uniquely be part of a single company? Can it be the function of a much broader network? And the last one is really effectiveness, is how does money relate to innovation, investment, and so on. I'm going to talk about each of these in turn as we go through. The first one aspect about leadership is the development of an innovation strategy. How does an innovation strategy reflect a business strategy? To what extent is it baked in, if you like, to a business strategy? How is innovation reflected in how a company goes to market, how it thinks about its position? To what extent is technology and knowledge management and so on reflecting the ability of a company to be a good deliverer of innovation? This is one of the first most important characteristics, is many of the best companies in this area tend to have innovation as an explicit part of their business strategies. Leading from that, usually an output of strategy is, of course, investment. Where do we place our investment dollars? Where do we expect our returns to come from? And in this, what we see from several different exercises is in how people allocate research and development innovation budgets to, let's say, the difference between low-risk areas and high-risk areas. Many companies go through this discussion about saying, well, how much should we put to, let's say, in-region work? And within that, how much do we need to invest in our new products? Within even our new products, then they might say, well, how much will go into our already mature lines of business, or the business lines that we understand? and how much investment needs to go into those lines of business which we don't understand particularly, for which we're prepared to take a higher risk. This really is a function about strategy setting, innovation being part of strategy, coming into budgets, setting spending targets, and lastly, and very importantly in the leadership area, is defining measurement. How do we measure this going forwards? Generally, there are three ways to look at innovation: as leading innovation, in-process innovation, and then the outcomes. There are a range of different metrics that can be used here. Some strategy metrics about risk anticipation, about, let's say, risk versus R&D versus positioning in an industry. Capability and performance metrics are also very important and very prevalent in here. Earned value, the percentage of innovation which comes into, let's say, innovations completed, requirements, and so on. There are many different ways to structure measurement, but measuring the effectiveness and how innovation works in a company's environment is extremely important. BMW is a very good example of this. And this is one of the leading companies to do this, where they look at innovation at every level of the company. They look at it at the board, they look at the innovation council, and lastly, the impact of innovations are reported on a very regular basis. It's interesting just to look at the innovation. They don't define market segments, but they define issues like lightweight, convenience and services, concepts, and so on. So for a company who's very sophisticated in how they think about innovation, the dimensions of which they look at innovation are quite revealing, I think, to us in the telco industry. The second issue is about technology push and market pull, and this is particularly relevant for a more maybe systematic way than in other industries. The tension here is either the market, let's say, meeting market requirements, so customer needs, trends, and competition, or driving technology abilities, so looking at technology developments and trends and so on, and allowing innovation to be pushed from a technology perspective. The balance that we need to achieve, or that successful companies achieve, is one which says, well, which is most appropriate for us? To what extent can we access technologies, and to what extent, given that we do access technologies, can we understand them? I'll keep going for the moment until Ali, I hear back from you. On page 15, I think you can see the screen I'm looking at. The outcome of this discussion is very much that the best-in-class innovations clearly mix market needs with technology designs, and those companies who are most effective show a corresponding return in how they bring these innovations forwards. 3M is one of these great companies who really spends a great deal of attention and time and effort in understanding markets and customers and developing from this a structured and systematic approach to gathering insights. The NPI process, which the new product introduction process, which 3M uses constantly, picks up the idea of innovators spending time with the market, understanding clearly what customer needs, and using that insight and that knowledge to drive their own innovations and their own sense of development. The third factor that we feel is extremely important is the idea of the global network. And again, particularly in the telecommunications business, where so much of what we do is available across the world, but equally so much of what we do can learn from innovations in other areas. Let's take mobile commerce, for example, and mobile banking. The mobile banking revolution arguably was developed in Japan as much as 10 or even 12 years ago. Curiously, this didn't come from the mobile business, it came from the transport business. So Japan Rail, or JR East, who's the larger provider around the Tokyo region, created the what they call the Tusa card, which is a stored value card through which you could pass the gates into the subway system. Well, NTT Docomo looked at this and thought, wow, actually this is extremely clever. Let's put this into a mobile phone. So that innovation triggered immediately a completely different way that people saw their phones. On top of this, as an application, BitWallet, which was a small company formed by a consortium of banks, created the ability to store value then relating back to people's telephone bills and eventually into personal credit. So from one innovation in Japan, what we've seen is over several different places, so Hong Kong with the octopus system, London with the octopus system, Singapore, other different countries, and even here with the in Dubai with the new metro system here, Etisalat is looking at integrating NFC, so near-field communications, into handsets and integrating that in turn into the metro system. There's many ways in this sense that digitization, which is a very broad way of saying digital innovation, can learn from other markets and from other examples around the world. Again, looking back to BMW is a particularly good example of this. BMW has a technology office in Palo Alto, R&D in Japan, and engineering in the Midlands in the UK, as a way of explicitly capturing and harnessing the regional requirements, which can turn into global trends and so on. The fourth characteristic, which is particularly important for successful innovation companies, is that of open innovation. Closed innovation on one side keeps ideas inside a company, where open innovation opens up the ideas to very much ideas from the outside. It's turned out to be a fairly difficult problem to crack, this one, because it involves a great deal of trust for a company to open up some of its views and some of its thinking. The returns when they come back tend to be quite dramatic, is that all of a sudden a company is open to many different ideas from many different communities, many different thinkers, many different approaches, such as P&G showed when they explicitly launched this idea of connect and develop and opened their network to 8,000 researchers around the world. They created a very interesting and very groundbreaking approach to saying, we don't know everything. We want ideas from other people. We want different approaches from different communities. Consequently, we've seen increasing sales from new products to about 30% within 3 years. And in many ways, P&G has set the tone for making this happen. Telcos, by their, in turn, have looked at innovation as also in an open manner. There are many different telcos who have agreements with each other on the top right-hand corner. China Telecom and Orange, for example, Etisalat and Telefonica. Many different companies take advantage of each other's research and development and innovation networks to benefit from themselves, from each other's experiences. Vendor partnerships are particularly common. And in many ways, I think a cynical view would say that whereas once the telco operators did their own research and development, they've now largely outsourced this to the vendors. So to Ericsson, to Huawei, to ZTE, and so on. In-house labs, I regret to say, are becoming increasingly rare. Only some of the very largest telcos can afford these anymore. Deutsche Telekom still has some, France Telecom. All of these are becoming more and more in conjunction with state universities and state efforts. NTT does some terrific research. Other companies around the world do some research, but to a lesser and lesser degree. Venture capital is playing a very important enabling role. We're in partnership with a telco operator. Venture capital can take risk which operators feel is difficult for them. They can play a role to invest in new idea portfolio profiles, like maybe one out of two, or even every single idea to be very much working. And lastly, and very importantly, and relevant for this discussion, is the relationship between operators and the academic community. Academic cooperation is extremely important, and in fact, this webinar is one of these areas which shows how academic cooperation can work very well. Our last area of looking at the characteristics of successful companies is to look at effectiveness. Now, over the last decade, absolute spend on innovation has risen by about 10% compounded every year. The tricky thing comes from figuring out from this spend, and we're looking at about $550 billion of spend in research and development in 2010, just in the top 1,000 companies. From this spend, where's the effectiveness? Now, there's two interesting points here, is to look at the concentration of spend in computing and electronics, in health, auto, industrial. Only 2%, of course, is in telecom, which is a very small amount. And to look then at the effectiveness of how the spend has come out. Well, we conducted the survey in 2010 and then in 2011. Well, we're looking at comparing the top spenders in innovation and how the respondents to the survey, so how the top 1,000 companies judge their peers as being the most effective. Apple, for example, is not even amongst the top 10 of spenders on R&D yet, is judged to be the most innovative company in 2011. Apple's R&D spend is about $1.7 billion annually. This is not anywhere near the top 10. The lowest of the top 10 is J&J with $6.8 billion. There's only 3 companies who fall into both categories, Microsoft, Samsung, and Toyota, as being both the very top spenders and having gained a reputation as being some of the most effective. In terms of effectiveness, Toyota's 3-pillared approach, so very much building innovation into its strategy at every level, ensuring that innovation is present in engineering, and lastly in program management. The concept here is of quite persistent and quite sustainable. The first one is what we term the need seekers. So those companies who strive to be the first movers, they engage with their customers to figure out what people need. They determine new innovations almost before the market requires them. The market readers follow the leaders. They focus more on incremental change. They wait for the big steps forwards, and then they follow up with the big steps. And lastly, the tech drivers, so those who are technology first. Google is an excellent example, Xerox also. Each model has a distinct set of innovation goals, and in this one I'm going to focus on the need seekers. The need seekers have a goal of delivering advantaged products and services, the best products and services in the market. They generally have a culture which is open to ideas from the outside and which looks at innovation as a central part of corporate functioning. The need seekers are highly effective. When we ask people, well, what strategy do you follow? And they say, well, look, generally we're in the need seeker bracket. We ask them then, how's the relationship between, let's say, alignment of business strategy and then cultural support for innovation? And the need seekers generally across the whole community seem to be very, very aligned on these two issues. So they look at delivering innovation as part of their culture. They say, we are an innovative company. This is how we survive. And secondly, they say, well, as a function of that, or maybe because of that, our business strategy is very much aligned with our innovation strategy. So there's a commonality, there's a kind of coherence in their approach, which we don't necessarily see in the other models, so the market readers or the tech drivers. Consequently, as you would hope, the results bear out this approach. The mean normalized 5-year CAGR of gross profit for need seekers tends to be higher than the other models. Equally on the enterprise value, it's the same function. I appreciate that the differences are not dramatic here, they're not orders of 10%, but it is noticeable and it is measurable that this particular innovation model can and does yield higher answers. One of the reasons for that is clearly that innovation is very much tied to the top-down agenda. So senior management, the board, the chairman, is saying throughout the whole area, they're saying, we drive innovation. We are fully aligned with innovation, and this is absolutely important. The second idea over here is that innovation is led at senior levels inside the organization, and that's most important. To close my discussion, I think we're coming up on about 30 minutes, I'd like to just focus on the critical components of what we call insight and innovation. So how to do it? What do we do next? If we settle with the need seeker model, and we think that this is the most, let's say, relevant for telecommunications operators, there's 3 particular dimensions which are important. The first one is about organization ownership. Where does all the innovation sit inside the organization? The second one are the tools, the processes, and the capabilities which are required to deliver it. And lastly is really the implementation. How do you get going with this model? In the first discussion about organization, generally there are 2 routes that we see people taking. One is aligning innovation around opportunities, in this case, maybe consumer fixed mobile convergence, business fixed mobile convergence, infotainment, managed services, applications, for example. These ideas about saying, well, let's align our innovation capabilities towards a particular market area of growth. This is one model. Another model takes this and shifts it by 90 degrees and looks at how innovation is delivered. One possibility is through venturing, is through mergers and acquisitions, acquiring smaller companies who are particularly good. Cisco is a brilliant example of this model. Another one is a partnership approach. We're saying, well, we can't do this ourselves. We must learn and work with other people to deliver innovation. So they organize them around a partner process. And lastly, then, there's the make rather than build. How can we do this internally? How can we marshal our own resources? So one of the first discussions should be where to put innovation inside the organization, how to align it, how should it work. The second discussion should be around tools. Innovation needs collaborations, it needs vendor partnerships. It can look at how to work with OpCos. Now, OpCos can be group operating companies, or they can be individual operating companies themselves. Venture capital and emerging technologies can be extremely useful in allowing an organization I'd be delighted to hear them. Thank you very much for the opportunity to to present our views on it. Ali,
Yeah.
back to yourself or the members of the audience.
Sure. Thank you very much, David. So we think we did lose you a couple of times during the session, but I think that overall it went pretty smooth. So, folks, if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand, and I will give you an opportunity to speak to David as well. Or else you can equally post your questions in the chat box, which I've already started receiving, and I can go ahead and start beginning to read for David. There's one, a brief one, an interesting one just came. Let me go over it. This one was about the person. It was about the collaborative innovation. The comment was posted, I have heard a lot about the practice of collaborative innovation. Could you please explain in layman's word what is the practice of collaborative innovation?
Sorry, Ali, the practice of what innovation?
Collaborative.
Collaborative innovation. Okay. Yeah, look, this is an interesting one. It can go in a couple of different ways. In layman's terms, collaborative innovation is not doing something yourself. It's working with another company or with another entity, so a research organization, another operator, even an entrepreneur or a smaller company to work together on a particular goal. Let me give you an example. One of our clients wanted to create a mobile payment platform in West Africa. They had some ideas about it. An interesting startup came to them and said, look, we're thinking about the same thing. So actually what they did was they formed a joint venture, a joint initiative, which is part paid by one of them, part paid by the other. Together they went forwards and cracked the case and figured out how to do it and figured out how to bring a particular piece of software or a particular, in this case, an application to these markets. Now, the operator, our client, got the benefit out of being able to bring this technology to market. The entrepreneur held the license to some of the fundamental underlying technology, and he was allowed to go and commercialize this in other markets in which our operator client was not present. So in this sense, they both collaborated to get to a common goal or a common endpoint. This is very, very, it's a very common approach. You share the risk, you share the reward.
Okay.
I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think that's pretty well explained. I think we have another questioner. Let me try to unmute. Sarah Karim, I believe you have a question. Would you like to speak, or I also understand that you have posted in the chat box, so you want me to read over? Sarah, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so would you please introduce yourself and feel free to ask a question to David?
Hi, yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, yeah. Basically, my question was, you talked about performance measurements and how they lead to short-termism, and they can just focus basically on current business. So, what are you implying in terms of KPIs and balanced scorecards? I mean, are you saying that this stifles innovation? Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure, but forgive me, I only heard the last part of your question, so when you said the first time about balanced scorecard. Could you repeat the beginning bit, please?
Sure. During your talk, you mentioned that performance measurements lead to kind of short-termism, and they focus more on the current business. So are you implying that we should do away with them?
Look, in many ways I would love to be honest, because I think that the short-term rewards, I think in many senses they do stifle innovation. If you, as an operator, let's say, or for that matter, any business, some innovation requires a longer view. Taking if you don't mind, a sort of just a telco example. Content development, let's take it this way. How to get interesting and lively and entertaining content to a particular audience in a particular market. Let's say you've got 3G. Now, if you have the only target which you have to meet is one which says, we need revenue in 1 month. the only thing you're going to do is you're going to go out into the market and buy what you can, which is currently available. You may miss the opportunity to really to invest in a new technology, to look at a new way that people engage with markets. You may miss the opportunity to drive something which is going to pay back much, much, much more substantially in, let's say, 9 months or even a year afterwards. And so in this sense, I'm not advocating one or the other, but what I am saying is that the short-term goals can definitely stifle innovation, and we've got to be very, very careful with how they're applied.
Hello, so what do you suggest one does? Because obviously you have to get this balance, and in your opinion, which organization or through your research, who's actually got it right?
I would say there's a lot of companies who get it right sort of by accident. There's a lot of companies who sort of over-engineer a product and a particular innovation and try to bring it to market too quickly and find that it doesn't work, and they have to slow down and they have to take a little bit more time. And the process then of let's say, re-engineering or thinking again about a particular innovation can buy them time which they need to really set the views properly. Innovations rarely work first out of the door. A product and service, a new product or a service will rarely hit the market very quickly and very effectively the first time. In the telco business, we've seen this over and over again. I came back to the content discussion. Let's say some of the early broadband service offerings, some of the news services, some of the engagement services, even the early social network services. I don't know if anyone remembers The Small World. The Small World was one of the first kind of really collaborative pre-Facebook discussions. It was bought in 2006. It was dead 2 or 3 years later, and its ability was eclipsed and other innovations. But I'm not providing you with the direct answer because I'm afraid there is absolutely no formal direct answer to this one. I would say that it's up to management to make the determination as to where revenue is going to, how much innovation revenue is going to be generated, and to be very, very careful that they don't over KPI some of the very early products, and even, to be honest, allow some of them to fail. If they don't fail, it's not punish the people who are putting them forward.
Okay, thanks. That answered the question.
All right. Thank you very much, Sarah, for your question. Let me move to the question box again. We have other interesting questions. There was another interesting one. David, person asked, even successful innovations cause incredible booms and busts. People under or overestimate the importance and potential profits of innovations. In your view, what are the most common risks attached to innovation?
That's a very good point, and I'm looking forward to the time when Apple's share price drops. Well, I'm not looking forward to it, but we're anticipating the time when Apple's share price drops below $500 quite substantially, or even Google for that matter. I guess another way of phrasing the question, although it has been phrased very well, is how can you make innovation sustainable? There are two answers to this. On an industry level, and let's look back at the year 2000. Let's look at the internet bubble. I was sadly part of this. Here is a case where an innovation got completely out of control. I think one of the reasons for this is that it was overhyped and it was misinterpreted. When you had people talking about internet capacities doubling every 18 months, frankly, this was a wonderful soundbite which spurred people's interest, which got people very excited about it. This is in a time when, on the mobile side, any business model or business plan that had WAP in it, so wireless application protocol, almost immediately got funding without people truly understanding it. How to avoid the boom and bust cycle in innovation is to be very careful about the claims that an innovation can deliver. Is to be very careful about how it can be applied, who's applying it, under which circumstances, and to make sure, ultimately, that the benefits that a particular innovation delivers are such that are very far-reaching and absolutely can change the way that people think about something. a touch screen, for example. Touch screens have been around for a very long time. The early innovations didn't include the sense of motion, so the swipe, the bringing your fingers together to make it even smaller or larger. It was only really when the first iPads came out and the first on the iPhones came out that people saw the true innovation of this type of control. And they saw how tactile interfaces could change how people respond to communications. So here was something that immediately became, because it was so wonderful and so intuitive to people, it was an innovation that became sustainable. Its value was clear, its value was perceived. There was no crazy kind of hype which then went away, because the innovation delivered again and again and again. I would contrast this against some of the expectations of mobile commerce, of mobile money. In some markets, the expectations of mobile money have gone way beyond what the technology can deliver. But in other markets, for example, Kenya with M-Pesa, the innovation itself was so straightforward, was so, let's say, modest in what it wanted to achieve, but yet fundamental in how it changed people's lives, that again it created this area of sustainability. In direct answer to your question, I would say that the magic here is to make an innovation which is itself sustainable, which doesn't promise too much and doesn't under-deliver, but tries to hit that perfect sort of balance in the middle. Again, it's not easy to do.
Okay. Well, that's again a good answer. There's another one in the chat box again from, I think, Brother Nazar, who mentioned that you briefly mentioned closed innovation. Is it recommended for effective for organizations to remain confined to ideas within the firm, or they should be open from the outside?
Look, my personal view on this one is that organizations should be as open as they feel comfortable with. It's very, very rare that a company itself will be set up to meet all of its needs for new ideas and new approaches and new business models and so on from its employees.
Okay. All right. I guess I can take another one. It sounds like a supplementary one which we already discussed, but let me read it for you. People guard their innovations and ideas carefully, fearing that sharing them will rob them of the recognition for their creativity and hard work. What are the key elements of creating a culture of rewarding innovations within the organization?
As elaborate as P&G's approach, which really set up a whole big web-based collaboration and, let's say, very, very open research and development environment. Net, I would say, companies are always better off opening themselves and creating open innovation networks. Sometimes this goes against their culture. It goes against what they're prepared to do, what they're prepared to think about. But most often than not, new ideas come from a combination of inside and outside. But outside is absolutely
Okay, David, you still there? Sorry, I thought I...
Yep.
Okay. Okay, let's take another last one. There's one on from the marketing side, I believe. It's the question is: should companies, especially mobile manufacturing companies, openly be proactive in advertising their upcoming product lines based on new innovations, or they should wait till the product life cycle of their existing products reached at its peak and then reveal the new ones?
Yeah, good one. A very interesting question. I think this depends on a couple of things. I think it depends on your position in the market. So if you're known for being, or rather if you set a particular position in the market as taking innovations to, in a very front way into the market, then advertising the innovations and telling people what you're going to deliver to them can be very powerful. Take NTT's example. NTT is fairly open about its technology roadmap throughout the year. They're quite straightforward about saying, well, we're going to develop such and such a handset, or we're going to be thinking about content in such and such a way. This is part of their customer engagement. They use these tools to kind of signal and advance to customers why they should feel loyal to them. Now, The flip side to this is in a hyper-competitive market. If you have a highly competitive market, like many of the mobile markets in which we participate, telling the industry what you're going to do before you do it usually is an invitation for somebody else to do it more quickly. So the danger is that somebody else will do it before you. So if you have a very strong technology platform which nobody else can replicate, if you have a market position in which case your customers expect you to be innovative, then yes, you can advertise in advance. You can tell people about it. And this itself could become part of how you engage with customers. If you don't have these tricks, then I would much rather stay quiet until you're absolutely ready and then launch like crazy and hope you get 2 to 3 months of commercial advantage out of it.
Okay, well, that brings towards the end of the webinar. A lot of comments, David, regarding the presentation, and all excellent comments. So once again, would like to thank you, Mr. David Tusa, on behalf of MILE, for your time and willingness to share relevant information and experiences with our participants. Also thanks to all of you who participated. We are glad you could join us and hope this session was helpful for you. We will be emailing you the link to a recorded version of this webinar in a couple of days once it's updated on our blog. Meanwhile, please note our other upcoming High Impact programs in year 2012 on High Performance Telecom and Program for Advanced Leadership and Management, PALM4, and High Performance Governments, HB2, are currently accepting applications for enrollment and selections. We are also having a one-day conference on Meet Leaders in Telecommunication Industry in Madinah on March 8th. So do visit our website, www.mile.org, to get more details about these programs and webinars. David, once again, thank you very much, and thank you everyone. You all have a good day. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Ali, thank you very much, and thank you for all the questions.
Thank you very much. I will be ending this webinar, so everybody will be automatically dismissed out.